KLK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? Live from the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk, and I am your host, Andy Frecka. And as we say every week, for God so loved the world, and that means that he also loves each of you who are listening, and he loves the borderland. He loves El Paso. He loves Juarez. He loves Clint. He loves Las Cruces and Hatch and everyone listening here today. And today we have a very special guest. I know I say that every week. Every week I say we have a special guest, but this week is especially special. He's a man who grew up in Amarillo, Texas, but went on to make El Paso his home. He is a recent UTEP Hall of Fame inductee or nominated, going to be an inductee very soon. He left UTEP as the school's all-time leading scorer in 2001 and currently ranks third in career points. I'm pretty sure I got this right because I got it off the UTEP site. He was named All-Western Athletic Conference 3 times during his career, including first-team accolades as a junior and senior. He made the All-Western Athletic Conference newcomer team following his freshman year in 1998. A standout in the classroom as well, he was a 2-time first-team academic All-America. So if there's any kids listening who are all about sports, you got to do your homework as well. He recorded 12 double-doubles in 7 30-point games as a UTEP minor. He averaged over 20 points per game as a junior and senior. He rated 7th nationally in scoring during the 2000-2001 season, en route to being named the Sporting News WAC Player of the Year. He ranks 2nd in school history in field goal percentage, 5th in free throw percentage, and 10th in rebounds. Following his dynamic basketball career at UTEP, he went on to play professional basketball in Europe, and he currently resides in El Paso, which means he came back to El Paso, which means he loves El Paso, I hope. He's now the area director for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So wherever you are right now, wherever you are, unless you're driving. If you're driving, don't do this. But if you're out in Clint, maybe you're down in Juarez, maybe you're up in Oro Grande and Chaparral, let's put our hands together for the one, the only, Mr. Brandon Wolfram! Brandon, welcome to 915 Talk.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun today. We're going to be here just chatting for an hour, talking about, of course, basketball, maybe some lessons we can learn through sports. We'll talk about El Paso. We'll talk about the borderland, and we will talk about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So I do hope for all those listening that there will be something for you over this next hour. And I do want to say, if you are a UTEP basketball fan, or you just have a question that comes up or a comment, you can always text your questions and comments in. The phone number is 915-265-8489. Again, 915-265-8489. Unless you're driving, pull over before you start texting. We don't want anyone texting and driving. So, we're not going to start off with basketball today. We're not going to start off with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes today. I think, is it fair to say you're a little bit competitive?
Not as much as I used to be, but yeah, pretty competitive.
Okay. All right. Then I like that. I think that's something that our Creator puts in us, right? To an extent. And so we're going to, normally we do this later on in the show. But today we're going to start off with our rapid fire question. Okay? And it's known as the lightning round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And I just want you to answer them as quickly as you can. And there are right or wrong answers. But we won't ridicule you too much if you get a wrong answer. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right. So, Kenny on the board. Let's do the lightning round.
Lightning round.
All right, Brandon. First question. And I'm going to make this a little bit easier for you because the last 3 weeks, no one has got this question right or had any idea what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you a hint, okay? This has to do with food. And the question is, red or green?
Both. Christmas. Yeah. Yeah, man.
Okay. That's very wrong. What we're talking about is salsa. Which do you prefer, the red or green?
I thought you were talking red chili or green chili.
Yeah, that is. Oh,
Yeah.
that is what. Oh, you
Yeah.
go for Christmas.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
Like in New Mexico, where
Yeah. So
in
when
El
they
Paso, I'd go. I don't know. I'd probably go red in El
You go
Paso.
red in El
But like when
Paso.
you're in New Mexico and they have the chili and all that.
So you just answer Christmas?
Yes. Yes.
I've never heard of this before. I love that. That's super cool. So you know more than I do, and I love that. And I tell people I'm new to El Paso, so I'm learning as we go. So it's all good. Okay, next question, and this is our El Paso trivia question. The Central Square in El Paso, San Jacinto Plaza. Do you remember the animal theme there?
It's alligator.
Alligator, that is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a sculpture of alligators in the center of the plaza. How many alligators are in that sculpture?
I don't know. 4.
Pretty close. 3.
3.
Yeah, okay. And all right, next question. LeBron or Michael?
Oh, come on, man. Michael.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Kenny on the board.
Yes. That's not even a question, man. Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. I want to remind both Kenny on the board and Brandon that I grew up in Akron, Ohio. So let's try this again. It's still Michael?
Of course.
Oh, tell us.
Yes.
So tell me why.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, 6 championships is number 1. LeBron is the greatest stat stuffer of all time, for sure.
Okay.
And the longevity is incredible.
Okay.
And everything that goes into that. Yeah. But,
All right.
I mean, it's got to be Michael, most dominant.
Okay.
I mean, the intangibles that go into it, the
Right.
dominance, the clutchness, and the 6-0.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I won't be too angry because I'm still a little bit, I guess, sour at LeBron for leaving Cleveland.
Twice.
Yeah, twice. Yeah. Thanks for rubbing that in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we are a Christian station. So we're going to do a little Bible trivia. You remember that the strongman, I feel like it's a sports question, a Bible sports question. You remember Samson, strong man in the Bible. He'd been working out. He'd been eating right. Possibly the Lord had given him an anointing. I think that's more correct. He killed, I believe it was 1,000 Philistines in a field. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Okay, what object did he use?
It was a jawbone, wasn't it? Of a donkey?
That is correct. Okay, let's get back to sports. That's very good. And I'll say I love that afterwards he kind of did a diss rhyme for the Philistines. He's like, with a donkey, I turned you on to donkeys. That's pretty tough. That kind of action doesn't really make it into the New Testament. That's okay. So let's get back to basketball. Back to basketball. So there's been a kind of this phenomenon recently in the NBA. And you played in Europe for several years. And it's these European players coming over. Jokic, Doncic. What's up with that? Like, what do you
mean? Like, how come they're so good? Or
Yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of it's how they develop.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're over there, you're in a club system just like they have for soccer, and you're developing from a young age at the appropriate way. Over in America, it's play a ton of games, never practice, do all this travel team, go to AAU, no structure, and it's just there's very little development. You see NBA guys talk about this all the time. Even Kobe back in the day, Kevin Garnett talked like AAU is terrible, and then for the younger kids, they don't just play game after game after game without development, and it's exact opposite over there. You're in a club system where you're training, and if you're good enough, you don't just go dominate other kids your age. You just move up. Like, Luka was in the top league in Spain by the time he's, 14, 15,
he was
starting. He was at Real Madrid.
Yeah, exactly, when he was 16.
Yeah, so if you're good enough, you move up, play against older guys, but it's focused on development first and then game second. And they play team ball. In America, it's typically just one-on-one ISO type ball. Like if you go to a local gym here and you go to like a high school and you play open gym, it's going to be one kid going 1-on-5 putting his head down, and then maybe passing the ball at the end, because that's the way we play in America. And then over there, they're going to play the right way. They're going to pass, look for the best play. And this is just like something that's just because for a long time the Europeans coming over weren't that good, except for a few guys like Vlade Divac or Drazen Petrovic and all those guys.
Is it Jonas Zagauskas?
Yeah. I mean, he's all right.
Cleveland Cavs,
he can shoot a little bit, for being 7, whatever he was.
Exactly.
But most of the guys were flaming out for a long time. The Darko Milicic and all those guys, and then but over time, it's just the systems got better and better over there, and the players got better and better. Now you see the 4 out of the, I don't even know, maybe the top 5 guys in the world are not Americans.
That's very interesting. So you're saying in America the focus is on the game and not on practice.
Well, you don't get better in a game. I mean, if you're a second grader, you got to play a little bit, but all you do is play games. How are you going to get better at shooting by playing a game? How are you going to get better at dribbling and your skills by playing games? I mean, I trained for a lot of years before I came to FCA, and see kid after kid, on 3 teams, and they play 8 games in a weekend, and they get confused because I'm working on my game. I'm like, no, you're sitting in a corner, you're playing zone defense on defense. You're not learning how to play defense. You're sitting around on offense, maybe a couple shots a game.
Right.
And then no one cares if you lose because you have 7 more games that day. So you're not invested in winning, and it's just activity. And there's big confusion between activity and productivity. And so you see how the world trains now and versus America. But America has such a superior talent pool in athleticism. You still have like maybe not the top players in the world right now, but you still have great players for sure.
Okay, so any kids out there listening, the main event is not the game. The main event is practice.
As you get older, it shifts more to the game.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, USA Basketball even has guidelines for this, but just no one follows them because USA Basketball doesn't have any power. When you're younger, it should be 75 to 80% training versus 20, 25% games, and that shifts as you get older and older. And by the time you're 18 to 20, college level, then you're going to shift more towards more competition, less training.
Right.
But it's just so out of whack, and you see that here. No one knows how to play the fundamentals very well.
What's the number one fundamental American high school kids need to focus on?
I don't think it's one.
Yeah.
I think it's just playing the game the right way.
Okay.
And I know that's a general statement, but it involves everything: seeing the court, understanding how to read a defense, and not just put your head down, and then be general skill level across the board, whether it's shooting, passing, dribbling. All the stuff you got to do, but also know how to play defense.
Okay.
I mean, we don't teach defense in America correctly to maybe your varsity level in high school.
Right.
Because all these kids growing up, you're going to win in second grade if you play zone.
Right.
How many second graders can shoot you out of a zone? No, nobody, right?
Right.
So, but you're not helping kids get better by playing zones.
Right.
If I was running leagues or anything, I would just ban zone until you're like in 8th grade.
Okay.
Force you to play man on man.
Okay.
And stuff like that you can do to develop kids better. Play 3-on-3 more, play 4-on-4 more.
Okay.
Also, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one to say this. You have coaches say this.
Right.
You have top level players say this.
Yeah.
And
Very, very interesting. Thank you. So, last question of the lightning round. You have the opportunity, if you had the opportunity, to send a text message to everyone in the borderland. And it would come to them in the language that they're most comfortable with, English, Spanish, or whatever. What would that text message say?
Man, that is a good question. I don't know. Something about what's your priority? Where are you going to be when you die? Something focused on, all this stuff's important to some extent, what you do, but what you do with Christ is more important. Something to focus that.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's a question. Make the person receiving the message think for a moment. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. I want to talk a little bit about your history, your story. You grew up in Amarillo, and from what I understand, you didn't play a single game of high school basketball. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
No.
So,
I played growing up, and then I played through my freshman year.
Okay.
And then I quit my sophomore year. I had knee surgery on both knees.
Right.
And I didn't come back my junior year until after the season.
Oh, okay.
So I came back to the team right after their season. So basically I did the off season my junior year, and then I played my senior year. So I signed with UTEP before I'd played a varsity game. So that's what it was.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
okay. So tell me about that, because I think it's easy for us now to talk about in a way, because we're sitting here in the studio. You've had your career in Europe. You had your dynamic career at UTEP. So everything, I think, turned out pretty well. I think that's fair to say. But at that time, you didn't know what was going to happen.
No, not at all. I mean, when I came back to play basketball, my junior year in high school, I ended up, I just was coming back to play, right? And so I ended up playing AAU. Again, complaining about AAU just a little bit ago, but it's one of those necessary evils, because, how are you going to get seen, especially in a place like Amarillo, if you don't get out of Amarillo and go play,
right?
In Dallas or Houston or some places like that. I mean, same thing in El Paso. Even though El Paso is a lot bigger than Amarillo, you still got to get out of here and show you can play. So playing AAU over the summer, I was just doing really well, I guess. And the right guy saw me. Some guy knew who Coach Haskins, one of the early versions. One of the early versions of recruiting services that are ubiquitous now.
Okay.
So he knew Coach Haskins, and then so I just got recruited basically on summer ball.
Okay, wow.
And then I signed early before our season started.
So UTEP signed you, and you had only played your freshman year.
Yeah, plus AAU.
Yeah, okay, plus
summer.
AAU.
Yeah.
So they'd seen something, a sample size.
Yeah, the AAU would have been like the best. I mean, they would have to see me do that anyways,
Right.
I mean,
okay. But when you were going through, after your surgery, when you were going through, it sounds like 2 years, a year and a half?
Yeah, I mean, I was burnt out also.
Yeah.
Immature at the time.
Right.
It wasn't just the knees. It was multiple things.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself?
Oh, man. I don't know. It took me a long time to come back to the point I wanted to play basketball,
Oh, wow.
I mean, and yeah. And
so I'm guessing you were like in middle school and freshman year, you're probably a cheat code on the team.
I was one of the best players. Not in middle school. I was a bench warmer in middle school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So I was a second team guy in middle school. The freshman year, one of the best players.
Okay, so you had a growth spurt or what happened?
I don't know, man. Middle school was rough, all right?
Okay, gotcha. Okay, but in your ninth grade year, you're kind of a cheat code, but you got burnt out on basketball.
Yeah, and just, high school kids, going through a lot of stuff, don't know how to manage it, don't know how to deal with a lot of stuff sometimes.
Right.
And then knees were always hurting, and that didn't help.
Right.
And, so having knee surgery and just not wanting to play at the time, for a variety of reasons.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I know that, when you're kind of maybe the player for a sport in an area, there can be a lot of pressure to do it, and you're just not there yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it is now. The way pressure works now through the internet and social media and stuff.
Okay.
I can only imagine the difference now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, back then, we just had dial-up internet and, didn't have cell phones and all that stuff, so we were more isolated.
Right.
So pressure was there, but not near to the extent that it is now.
Right. So you got a break from basketball.
Yeah.
And then you were recruited by the legendary Don Haskins.
Yeah.
And so tell me, when was your first trip to El Paso?
So it was the fall of my senior year in high school.
Okay.
And, so I came down to a recruiting trip, normal recruiting trip.
Okay.
Went to a football game, hung out with some of the guys, talked to Coach Haskins, that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
So that's the first time I've been to El Paso.
Okay, so it's a recruiting trip. They're trying to show you the very best of what you're about to experience. What was your first impression of El Paso?
Man, I don't even remember when I first got here.
You're 17, 18 years old. And you don't even know where you're going.
No, this is like, you don't go on the internet, look up stuff back then.
Right.
I didn't even know who Coach Haskins was.
Oh, wow.
So, to some extent, I remember vaguely watching in 92 when UTEP beat Kansas in the Sweet 16. I remember because they had the orange jerseys, and I remember that. So that was the most I knew about UTEP at the time. We didn't have cable growing up until my senior year, so I couldn't even watch college basketball.
Right.
And until that last year.
Right.
And then they had the whack on a lot of the teams we were going to play. Yeah. But when it came down here, they just took you around to the UTEP places mainly.
Okay.
So it wasn't like a big tour of El Paso or anything.
So you It was 100% focused on basketball. You weren't really understanding what the city was.
No, not at the time.
Okay.
I was so naive. You know,
Right.
I mean, back then, it's just so different than now. You know, now you have a phone, you look up everything.
Sure.
You know everything. And back then, you just, okay, I'll go. Whatever.
Right.
I'll go to El Paso for the weekend.
Yeah. Okay. So then you came to El Paso. Once you moved in, what was your impression then?
So, yeah, when I first got down here, it was definitely a lot of culture shock
Okay.
for the first several months. Or not several, maybe a couple months. Just new place, new culture, new everything. Growing up in Amarillo and then coming down here and then totally different basketball situation from Amarillo High where I went to here.
Right.
Just different everything.
For
so
sure.
It took a while to adjust. But El Paso grows on you.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay, so we're going to kind of fly through your time at UTEP, but you know the numbers kind of, I think, speak for themselves. When you left, you were the leading scorer in UTEP history, which is pretty amazing given all the UTEP's teams throughout the years. What was the highlight for you?
I don't know if there was one highlight. I mean, people asked that before. I mean, it's just like the whole thing, I guess you could say. You know, I mean, just the whole experience. A lot of ups and downs. A lot more ups than downs overall, especially looking back. You know, don't focus on the losses so much and stuff like that. I think it's just the whole experience and what we got to do and where we got to play and who we got to play against. Right. And just that aspect to it. So I don't think there was one thing that really stood out.
Okay. Yeah. Any disappointments?
Yeah, I mean, just the wrong losses, the bad losses at the wrong time, especially my senior year. You know, yeah, you lose one or two games at the wrong time, and get shut out of the tournament, or stuff like that. So that was probably
Gotcha. Yeah, so that maybe the team didn't go as far as you were hoping, or
especially my senior year. We had my best team my senior year. We ended up, I think, 23-9, but only NIT. We were second in conference to Fresno State, and we had a couple of bad losses at the wrong time in the second half of conference. And if we'd won one or two of those games, we probably would have been in the tournament. So,
wow. Okay. All right. So after being at UTEP, you went to Europe. And how old were you?
So when I graduated, I was 21.
Okay.
And then I turned 22 because I have a midsummer birthday. And then I ended up going to, the first time over was not a good experience, Okay. So I went to Greece for a couple months and ended up having, I figured out you better not have bad games and be the American on the team because then you get cut, So,
oh, wow.
So that's, I was in a team and we played good for 2 months, but then I went on a bad streak and so
it was over.
Yeah, it was over. So we have a couple of bad games at the wrong time, and your team's losing. So the way it works over there is there's 2 Americans per team, and you're expected to put up numbers. Well, not every country. It varies from country to country, but most have like a 2 American per team rule.
That's interesting.
Because otherwise, there's just tons of Americans and not enough
local.
Yeah. Kind of hurts the league.
It's no longer a European league.
Yeah, so some countries are opened up, like Germany, Italy for a while, so it can vary. But anyways, you're expected to put up numbers. So you have a couple bad games, team's not doing well. You don't have a reputation because you're new or something, So I ended up getting cut from there.
Okay.
So I went to, which is weird, very weird.
Okay.
And so I went to Poland. And
where were you in Poland?
So I was just outside of Warsaw.
Okay.
So I was there for about, I don't even remember, like a month, and maybe not even that. And so I actually played good there. But then I had an opportunity to go to Italy, and I didn't want to stay in Poland,
Nothing against our listeners in Poland right now.
No, it was just, it was 2001, so they were just coming out of communism, just not too
right.
So it was just, there was a transition state. It was freezing cold, even though it was like October, and the gyms were cold, and it's just at that time. I mean, I probably could have done well, and there's a lot of guys that stayed in Poland and did well. I just didn't want to stay there, so I was like, I can go to Italy,
right?
And so I went to Italy for about a month.
And Kobe played in Italy.
Yeah.
So you and Kobe, you're like the same person.
Yeah, we're the same.
Okay, gotcha. I like that.
Just a few differences. So I went to Italy, and I never really got a chance. It was weird. It was a really weird situation because Italy was one of the open leagues in terms of Americans at that time. So like Greece, Spain, all these others was just 2 Americans per team. But Italy had like a ton of Americans.
Okay.
So, like Jeff Shepard was on that team, from Kentucky, and then he was there, and a bunch of other guys. So, and I'm the 22-year-old young guy, rookie, I guess, for being over there, and never, I did fine in practice, but never got a chance in the games. And after a while, they tried to ship me out to this like second division team, and I was like, man, I just want to go home.
Okay.
So I ended up going home after by the end of the year.
So you were there for a year.
I was there for like half a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're 20. I'm trying to understand this. So in high school, you didn't play for 2 years because you were injured.
Yeah.
You come to UTEP. You have an amazing career at UTEP. You go to Europe. So it's a little bit of an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, and again, it's just like hard to communicate back then too.
Yeah.
I mean, we view it through the filter today, where you can message anybody from around the world, and you have your iPhone, and you can talk to them and see in their face. But back then you couldn't.
Right.
It was hard to find internet.
Right.
It was like $5 a minute to call overseas.
Yep.
Stuff like that. So
I spent some time in Europe during those years. I remember very well.
Very isolated.
Yeah.
Very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And so after a while, I was like, forget this, man. I just come home. So I came back to El Paso, basically for the spring semester of that next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to get back to it, but first we're going to go to a break. It's going to be 2 minutes. We'll be back with Mr. Brandon Wolfram in 2 minutes. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Hey, El Paso and Southern New Mexico. Thank you for listening to 915 Talk. KELP Christian Radio would love to just build a relationship with you, hear from you, get your feedback on all of the programs. You can send your feedback by going to the contact form at kelpradio.com and just sending us a note, letting us know what programs you love, and that really helps us as we pray for the future. Also, please be sure to follow us on Facebook. You'll find us at the page is called KELP Christian Radio, and just hit that follow button, and then you can keep up with the latest station news. Finally, and probably most importantly, go to KELPradio.com and look for that 915 pray link, especially if you've been missing the 9:15 a.m. and 9:15 p.m. prayer for the 915. Listen to a few of those prayer requests and join us in prayer. Let's continue to pray together and believe together for our region.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
We are back, and this is 915 Talk, and we are with Mr. Brandon Wolfram, the UTEP Hall of Fame nominee, soon-to-be inductee / legend. So we left off. You did not have a great first 6 months in Europe, and I guess I want to ask, because you work with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes now, and you dealt with your share of adversity as a young man. And how was that? I think you were hoping to be drafted into the NBA. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that didn't happen.
Yeah. No.
And then to be cut from Europe.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So what was going through your mind? How were you handling this? And maybe that's again to ask, what did you learn about yourself during that time?
It was a lot of ups and downs, but I was, at that point I was burned out from basketball again, honestly. So when I came back from Europe, I was half relieved and half like, yeah, this didn't work out.
Okay.
And so I didn't touch a basketball for about a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And after that, I was just like, I don't even want to mess with it at this point. And it was for a variety of reasons. Just, tend to push really hard.
Yeah.
And then everything dealing with UTEP and just everything, the whole thing, process, and just all the things.
What do you mean dealing with UTEP?
Well, I mean, okay, so like Coach Haskins retiring, new coach comes in. It's just a bad situation the last couple of years.
Okay.
Coaching, just the whole environment, and it was just a lot of junk going on.
Okay, so you actually hadn't finished college.
Well, I didn't. Well, at that time, the business I was a business management major. At that time, it was a 4.5-year degree.
Okay.
So I still had to have like 1 semester left.
Okay. So after you're just saying it didn't work out, so you go back to finish your degree.
Yeah. So
is that what happened?
Yeah. So I came back here. I had 1 more semester, and I was trying to stay on scholarship as long as possible. So I was trying to drag it out.
Gotcha.
Take classes I didn't need and stuff like that. Just to keep the checks rolling in for as long as possible.
Gotcha.
But, so then I graduated, and then God just really opened the door to work for FCA. I worked for FCA back then from about 2002, 2005 for about 3 years. And that wasn't something I expected to do or even sought out. Just kind of opened, the door opened. And so I did that for three and a half years. And then I was getting the itch to play again.
Okay.
So I started training again and working out with a lot of the guys that were at UTEP at that time. And got back into it, and then went back over to Spain for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
so like 2005, 2010. I went back overseas, and it was a lot better. Spain's just better, man. You go to Eastern Europe, it's crazy. It's like it's the farther east you go, the weirder and crazier it is. I mean, we were in Greece, and they have riot police in the stand. It's just like a soccer game. I mean, you have riot police, full riot gear, shields. You have,
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like throwing stuff at you. Like in a soccer, you have the benches covered by the hard plastic. You have that in basketball because they'll throw batteries at you. They'll throw water bottles at you.
Yeah, there's a level of intensity.
Yeah, it's just that's the culture. They're smoking. I mean, there's like a cloud of smoke at the top of a gym. Half the players are smoking during halftime and stuff. It's crazy. And but Spain is a lot more like playing there is like here.
Yeah.
Their soccer is crazy, but their basketball is pretty restrained.
Okay.
In terms of like fans and how they behave and stuff. So it was a lot better the second time around.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in Spain's like, it's sunny outside, everything's okay.
Just relax.
Socialized healthcare, we're good, right? So it
is good, man. It is good. I ain't gonna lie,
Life is good.
I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah. So you had a good 5 years in Spain.
Yeah.
And then you came back to El Paso.
Yeah, and I eventually ended up just, we ended up back here. So after a little bit, we ended up doing basketball training. And so did that for a long time, actually on the west side here. And then ended up.
Like you were training. You had
just private training. Like one-on-one, small group, stuff like that. And
because as you said, in America, they don't train the kids the way they should be trained.
I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And the problem with private training is great, but it's just not accessible to a lot of people. It's expensive. So, I mean, I don't fault it. And I never had a trainer in my life, growing up. That wasn't a thing when I grew up. This is just a thing.
Well, that's amazing because you're a tall guy. You're 6'9"?
Yeah, 6'8".
6'8". Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And you, I think what you're known for is your shot. And like a mid-range jumper, and I think I saw in Europe you had like a 40% three-point shooting.
I think my
average.
highest year is like 42, 41, something like that. Yeah.
That's kind of you're doing your Jokic shot behind your head. No, it looks better than that. I saw your shot.
Yeah, a lot of it is just I just grinded, and fortunate to have a really good high school coach because back then, where would you find information on how to train and how to play? Watch. I had a Michael Jordan Come Fly With Me VHS from 1990. I just watched that every day.
Oh, wow.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Had the thing memorized.
Yeah.
Still have it to memorize to this day.
Okay.
And then try to go do those moves.
Okay.
Which is pretty much impossible, right?
Right.
So, fortunately I had a good high school coach and then just trial and error and a lot of time. That's kind of how it worked for me.
Okay. So you were in Europe. You had a good 5 years. I like to hear it because there was a journey to get there, and you came back to El Paso. Why?
Well,
El Paso.
I mean, after so many years in El Paso, everybody moved away. All of the same age group moved away from Amarillo. So if I go back to Amarillo, some families there, but not many people my own age. Everybody went to college and left, essentially from a school and basketball team. And also just more connections here. You get rooted in a city for 97 to 2005. Church and all the people you get to know, and plus the UTEP connections. UTEP just opens up doors for basketball and all that stuff like that. So it just made sense to come back here.
Okay. So you've been in El Paso for 14 years since Spain, roughly?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
since '97, except for when I was overseas.
Overseas, and
Yeah.
in your globe trotting of Greece, Italy, Poland, Spain,
Yeah.
and the craziness of European basketball. So let's talk a little bit about the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Why does it exist? Why does El Paso need the FCA?
Well, FCA started originally in the 1950s, and a guy named Don McClannon he was a coach, an athlete, and he, his whole thing was, why do athletes endorse everything, and from cigarettes to cars to washing machines and all this random stuff, but they don't endorse Christ. So he started the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and got one of the big early supporters was Branch Rickey, the guy signed Jackie Robinson, a big name back, really big name back then. So in the sports world, and so he got some big name people on, and then it started as camps at first, and how can Christian athletes come together and proclaim Christ, and also support each other, and also just learn how to honor God through what you do. And then it expanded from there, professional and college levels, and then into campuses, and then around the world now. I think it's 115 countries now FCA is in. And it's been in El Paso since late 70s, 1977. And, primarily on campuses here. We do camps and stuff in the summer, typically out of town, not in El Paso. We're trying to do more like sports camps, leadership camps, stuff like that here. But it's, mainly high schools, UTEP, New Mexico State, college-based.
Right. Okay, so he was saying there was a time when athletes were not really openly professing their faith in Christ. Is that?
Well, openly endorsing Christ on a public stage. Not that there weren't Christians and doing what they need to do, and representing Christ on the field and stuff, but not openly proclaiming.
So
and using it as a platform.
Okay, so tell me what you think is going on now in the athletic world, because this is something I've thought about a little bit recently. So the famous Tim Tebow came out as a football player. He was very open about his faith, and there was a lot of public pushback. Here we are. How many years has it been? About 10 years later, roughly? Maybe a little bit less. I can't remember. But now it seems so many athletes profess faith in God, at least, if not faith in Christ. What is happening? And there seems to be no pushback.
I think, when FCA, you always say it's not a pedestal, it's a platform.
Okay.
And so
What's
it's
that
not to, I'm not going to be a star athlete to have everybody tell me how wonderful I am and put myself up there.
Okay.
I'm going to use the platform God gives me to proclaim Christ and what he's done for us. And I think a lot more athletes are understanding that. And organizations, FCA is certainly not, there's Athletes in Action, there's similar organizations. FCA might be the best known one, maybe not El Paso, but, nationwide. And pouring into these guys' lives and saying, hey, fame is temporary, it's fleeting. You're here on the top today, and you might be at the bottom tomorrow. But this is an opportunity to focus on what really matters.
Right.
And it does not matter how many games you win and how many yards you throw for and how many baskets you make. I mean, it doesn't ultimately matter.
Right.
And you can't take any of that stuff with you. And 20 years from now, no one's going to remember you anyways. I mean, who remembers who won the Super Bowl 5 years ago?
You're right.
So all this stuff is like so fleeting.
Right.
And so pouring into these guys, working with, at a professional level, college level, and high school level, I think a lot of it's that, just laying the groundwork early on, saying what matters is your character. What matters is how you do things, not what you do, in the sense of like, how are you doing this? So if you lose, how do you act? If you win, how do you act? How are you representing Christ through your actions, not just did you win the game? And then if you win the game, I give glory to God.
Right. Okay. Now, the name of the organization is the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Do you only have Christian athletes that you're working with?
No. Like on a campus, like at a high school, for example, we call it a huddle, which is the on-campus group. Doesn't have to be on campus. Could be at a home. Basically, just a Bible study group, and anybody's welcome to come. If you're going to be a leader, you need to be a Christian. If you're going to be a staff or anything like that, obviously you have to, be a Christian. And but anybody's welcome to come for sure. A lot of our kids at even the ones that go to camp sometimes, not believers, but they get exposed to the gospel, exposed to a different way of doing things.
Yeah. Okay. So give us an idea of the huddles in El Paso and the borderland. What is here?
Yeah. We across our area, which from unofficially, we have New Mexico, like Las Cruces, and far west Texas down to the Big Bend area. So, but the primary would be, Paso and the surrounding communities. And so we have about 31 huddles.
Okay.
Yeah, and mostly in high schools, but then, UTEP, New Mexico State, Sol Ross, so in the 3 universities in our area too.
Okay.
And
I guess I always think of FCA as high school, but it's more university, or what is it?
Well, I mean, it's at all levels. It's at all levels. It's real big at universities. We're trying to get it bigger here, for like at UTEP and New Mexico State. But for us, just because we don't have a whole lot of staff, it's primarily high schools, but other areas, middle schools, and then also trying to get into private sports because, more kids play league, club, different types of leagues than they do because it filters out. How many players on a high school basketball team, 13, 14.
So you don't think club sports are a scam?
I think they, to a large extent, it's like AAU. It's a necessary evil for a lot of sports.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it is a scam.
Right. If we add the word elite, we can charge double.
Yeah. And the reason I say it's a scam is because the way so many people sell it as you come play for this, you pay this amount of money per month, and we're going to get you a college scholarship. We're going to get you in front of all these people. We're going to do this, this, and this for you. And that's almost never true.
Yeah.
And if they sold it the right way, we're going to develop you and give you the best chance to succeed. And if you're good enough, someone's going to find you.
Right.
And if you're willing to invest, to me, that's a little more honest.
Right.
And I'm sure some clubs are like that. But the sport like volleyball, you can't play it like Coronado or Franklin if you're not playing club.
Wow.
It's just, it's just such a level, and that's the only way to keep developing throughout the year.
Yeah.
It's just really hard.
Yeah.
Basketball is probably a little different just because the club system here is not very good.
Do you follow like what's going on in the high school sports in El Paso?
Not super close.
Not super close. Okay.
Know a bunch of the athletes. I'll go watch basketball games.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you see happening in high school basketball in El Paso?
Oh my gosh. So you can definitely see the lack of development structures in El Paso.
Okay.
So like if you have a good coach at a high school, what's he working with? He's not working with kids that have been trained the right way for 6-7 years, and they're coming in not knowing anything and starting from square one. So this is the difference like between El Paso basketball and somewhere like Amarillo where I grew up, or Dallas or places like that. And so they're kind of fighting against the stream here in a lot of ways. So there's good players and there's good programs and there's good coaches, but overall the organization and the structure for basketball in El Paso is just not there. You have these isolated leagues around town. And,
so what needs to happen to change that?
I don't know. I've talked with a lot of people about this. And one of the problems is you don't have a centralized place in El Paso to go play basketball. You don't have a multi-court facility. All these different groups keep talking about they're going to build one. Where are you going to build it? You're going to build it far east. No one on the west side's going to go. If you're going to build, you need it in central, like where we are right now. Yeah. But prohibitively expensive. It doesn't work economically because what are you going to do? Buy an extremely expensive building, knock it down, then build a big nice facility? It's just not going to happen. So
because of finance.
Yeah, just it doesn't work economically. I know groups, they've run the numbers and stuff, and especially the construction costs doubling in the last several years. A couple of them backed out just because it wasn't feasible economically. If you put on the west side, you're not going to have kids regularly go. You'll have a few, but who's going to travel from the far east to train 3 times a week? That's just not El Paso. That's not what we do here. Yeah. So not having that centralized place to dictate the sport, that's what you would need.
Yeah.
But you don't have that, so you have these leagues on the west side and the far east and these gyms, and anybody can start their league, and then it's just disjointed. And so
I'll say this. I believe, and this is why we're talking about this so much. I believe that God cares about basketball. It would be fun to as our listening community, we do what's called 915 Pray every week, and we're just praying for the community. It would be fun for us to start praying for a central basketball facility. It sounds like something where it doesn't make sense, so we need God to become a part of this.
I think, FCA Sports is what the initiative to get in the private side of sports is called. So, FCA and then FCA Sports. If you ever hear FCA Sports, that's what it means. Okay. And, I think FCA eventually can make a big difference. Even if you don't have a centralized huge gym you can work out of, how bad youth sports culture is. Everybody's been, the parents are acting crazy, the kids are, the refs, everybody's, it's just how it is. So I think FCA is stepping in, and because we can run leagues, or we can have teams within a league and focus on your character first, the process of development, having parents understand what's actually why are you acting like that at a game? It doesn't even make sense. It does not make sense. You know, I mean, like yelling at a ref or trying to fight someone else, or something, yelling at the coach. So, a Christ-centered approach from top down.
Okay.
I think.
So I think this is a great segue into the next question. The biggest test of your character as a basketball player, and I want to hear your opinion on this. Let's talk about flopping. First, describe flopping to those who do not really. We not all of our listeners are basketball fans. What is flopping?
Falling down when no one really touches you to try to game the system, to try to get the call,
right,
when it's not legitimate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what's it like as a professional player who's expected to act like something is happening that has not happened?
Yeah, you know the story. Yeah. It's, man, when I was growing up, and if you just go search on NBA fights from the 80s and 90s, that was
Bill Laimbeer?
Yeah.
Who are we talking about?
Yeah, all those guys.
Yeah.
Laimbeer, I mean, Larry Bird's fight, Robert Perry, all these famous fights, Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
All these guys were tough. You would never flop back then because you would be immediately ostracized from your team. You would, you'd lose your manhood because you just did not flop. The only person that flopped that era was Vlade Divac, and he got a pass because he's Euro. And there's still videos to these days on YouTube. Is it a flop or not? He was so good at it.
That's hilarious.
And but you just did not flop.
Right.
And Europeans flopped, but Americans did not flop until recently because your boy LeBron, he normalized it for Americans.
Yeah.
So. So it's a lot more mainstream now than it was, and they're trying to change the rules. You get fined and all this stuff, but nothing's really changed.
Right.
So, but
yeah, I've seen LeBron flop a few times. Were you pretty good at flopping? Did you improve over the years, or
no? I never flopped in college. I can't never. No one ever flopped.
I'm talking Spain right now.
Oh, in Spain, I think you've heard the story where you had to flop, right? Okay. So
I don't remember anything.
Okay, I'll tell you, man. So yeah. So when you would set a pick in Spain, all these little they typically have small point guards. They were like legit point guards, though. They're not just trying to score. They're like trying to drive in and create. So a lot of times the shorter guys were real fast. When you set a pick on them, they'd fall down. And it doesn't matter if I didn't move for 10 seconds and I'm just standing there. They would call it. If that guy fell down, they would call a foul on me. So after a while, I figured out the only way to not get the foul called on me was to fall down with him. So you see this guy coming around like you're running a horns, double picks up at the top or some play like that, and you see the guy and you can tell he's about to fall. So he hits you and you just have to crumple and fall down, and that's the only way not to get called. Okay. And so I had to do that several times. Okay. And it was terrible. All right. It was terrible. But
it was terrible. It really hurt your conscience.
It did, man. It made me feel guilty. Yeah. Well, but it worked though, because if I fell down, the ref wouldn't call it.
But then over time, your conscience becomes seared, and you're okay with it.
Yeah, and I start flopping all the time.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, so your dream for basketball in El Paso is something more centralized? Is that what you're saying? Or
I mean, I don't know. I was just thinking, if the answer to your question of how this can change, I'd have to be something where there's some kind of centralized authority, that someone had enough purchase in the community to get this done, where they can change the culture and change the way things are done top to bottom. I don't know if that's possible or not. Okay. And or if it's just going to have to happen in isolated little pockets. Okay. Or you have some kind of developmental structure come in, like FC Dallas has a team here, the Locomotives have developmental teams. Okay. Or you have some kind of program from outside come in and start having like a club type system, which wouldn't affect the whole community, but it could at least affect the kids that were tied into the program. Okay. And how they develop, for sure. Okay. So. All right. I don't know.
Yeah. And what's some of the I guess not adversity, but challenges you see that young people just in general in El Paso have today?
Oh man, you just see kids, on campus, and just there's so many hopeless people out there, and the way kids live their lives these days, tied to their phones, isolated from so much actual interaction, and all the pressure and all the swaying back and forth, and kids just, when I was growing up, kids rebelled, but they had rebelled against this idea that there is meaning and truth out there. And like, seems so many kids today don't even believe there's no meaning and truth. I just got to make it up for myself as I go along. You see that in all this, like all the gender stuff and all this other stuff. I'm going to brand myself in a certain way to create meaning so people can applaud me and give me hope. And so you see this all across the board in so many people. And it's just the drugs, it's crazy how many drugs, whether it's weed or or worse. So there's a lot more of that than when I was in high school. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is interesting. We're going to sound like a couple boomers right now.
Yeah.
But it is true. It is different than it was 20 years ago.
And a lot of it is just because, you see a lot of stuff tied to around 2012, social sociology and stuff like Jonathan Haidt is, not a Christian, but there's a lot of studies like that's when half America got smartphones and the social media and like the mental health, all these. I know you heard that term, mental health.
Right.
Up. No one ever talked about that.
No.
It went off a cliff starting on that. So, I mean, it's a correlation. The message of hope is still the same.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I find it interesting because I came to El Paso and actually the United States just a couple years ago. And when just coming to El Paso, and I had a job where I was visiting a lot of people in their homes, and to see not only what you're talking about, but maybe this was after the pandemic, just seeing people who never come out of their homes. They're working from home, and they get their groceries delivered, their dinner delivered, and it's this isolation, this loneliness that is not normal human behavior, and what you talk about, kids being on devices is all part of that. And, even we're sitting here in a radio station, a Christian radio station, and really I feel like media, I'm kind of sharing my viewpoint here, but I feel like media would love it if everyone in the world was on their own device in their own room, just completely split apart. But a Christian radio station, a Christian media should be pulling people together. So how can we do that?
Well, I mean, in FCA, we view sports as one of the best vehicles. It gets you out, forces you to do stuff and interact with other people. And it's just such a good way to open the door for the gospel. It's amazing what sports does. I mean, it's one of the few things that can still bring people together, and of different backgrounds, economic strata, races, all that kind of stuff, and be united or on a common ground. And it's amazing. Sports can open up locker rooms. It can open up fields, teams. If you're a good athlete, people listen to you. If you're a good coach, people listen to you. Whether that's good or bad, they do, and you have that influence. And so I think sports is one of the best ways.
So I know you work with athletes, but you also work with coaches, correct?
Yeah, I mean, FC has shifted more and more towards coaches over the years because coaches are so influential. I mean, everybody remembers their coaches. Right. If you played in high school, you're going to remember your coach the rest of your life.
I played soccer in high school, and I remember my coach would say, "Andy, are those your legs, or did you ride in on a chicken?" and that's what I remember from my coach. But I do remember.
Exactly. So they're going to have influence either way.
Yeah.
It's like Charles Barkley back in the day. I'm not a role model. Well, you're a role model either way. It's just what type of role model you're going to be.
Of course.
So working with coaches, because they're every single day, especially the breakdown of the family. So many kids don't have dads at home.
Yeah.
That coach is probably going to be the number one influential male, well, for a guy's sport,
Right.
And the number one or number two most influential person in the kid's life. So if we can work with coaches so that they can have godly influence throughout everything they do on a day-to-day basis, man, there's a quote that's thrown around in FCA a lot from Billy Graham. It says, coach is going to influence more people in 1 year than the average person will in their entire life.
Right.
So if we can tap into that influence, man, you can really multiply the gospel impact.
Okay. Yeah. So for those who may be listening either live right now or listening to the podcast later on Spotify or iHeart or watching on YouTube, how can they get in touch with FCA?
Well, FCA, our local website is elpasofca.org, which has all their information on there. FCA.org is a national and international website. They can just learn more there. Right. Or on Instagram. And that's probably the best way. Okay.
And I forgot to ask this earlier. You have the huddles. Are you also doing any training?
Basketball training?
Yeah, or
not really. I mean,
no?
Maybe one or two kids I used to train back in the day. I'll still do it here and there. But
you don't miss it?
No, not really.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And we only have a couple minutes left, and so I want to get to probably the most important question we've talked about today. Mavs or Celtics? Who are you pulling for?
Oh man, I'm definitely going for the Mavs.
For the Mavs.
We're gonna see what happens in Game 2 because last night was ugly. But they were, man, I don't know. I don't know where Porzingis looked like Dirk Nowitzki and all these. They're just hitting crazy shots, and Dallas couldn't run an offensive play.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see if they it looks like that in Game 2. It might be a short series. But I don't know. But I'm definitely going for Dallas.
You're going for Dallas. You're a Luka fan.
Yeah, I like Luka, Kyrie. I like.
Okay.
Plus, I just don't like Boston either.
Right.
So.
Well, Boston is it's a championship-starved city. So, anyway, this has been Brandon Wolfram with us today. Of course, we know him as the player from UTEP, but also sharing his heart for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes for the youth in El Paso. And I do want to say that next week on 915 Pray, we will be praying for the youth of the city. It's at 9:15 a.m., 9:15 p.m. right here on KELP. We believe that God wants to work among the youth, and He already is. They're hungry, they're lonely, they're looking for something more. So it's time for the church to step up and, first of all, believe that He wants to work among the youth and pray for that.
That's a great thing. They're so open right now.
Yes.
People listening, give out a ton of Bibles. They're hungry. They are. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, really appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, I do remind you that you can watch previous episodes of 915 Talk on YouTube. You can just look for the KELP radio channel. This particular broadcast will be available probably tomorrow on Spotify, iHeart, and YouTube next week. You can find all that at KELPradio.com. Again, thank you, Brandon. Thank you for everyone for listening. This has been 915 Talk. Let's love God. Let's love our neighbors and just enjoy our life here on the borderland. You have been listening to 915 Talk on KELP Christian Radio. To listen to past recordings of 915 Talk, just visit KELPradio.com and click on the 915 Talk link. Until next time, love your neighbor, love your city, and give God all the glory.